We're now transitioning into our first panel discussion. And so our next discussion explores what happens when God becomes more than just part of your business language, but truly the center of how you lead, decide, and build. Today's conversation, when God is the real CEO, surrendering control. Throughout this discussion, don't forget to engage using Slido. There's going to be a QR code that's going to come up on the screen, and then you can use it to submit questions live and upvote questions you'd most like the moderator to ask during the Q&A period. So please help me welcome our speakers. We have moderating this conversation is Jenny Okonkwo, CEO of Transform Consulting Incorporated. Hold on. Let me get through this. I have a job to do. Joining her is Mo Ekujumi, founder and CEO of SkillHat Founder Studio. Dwayne Holness, founder and chief visionary officer of Corex Creative. And Nneka Ezurike, multiple franchise owner with Shoppers Drug Mart. I know they're hot for you all, so warm them up and let's hear you!
Good and your mercy endureth forever. Lord, you are good and your mercy endureth forever. People from every nation and tongue, from generation to generation, we worship you. Hallelujah, hallelujah, we worship you for who you are.
Good morning, everyone. Great to be here and to see so many of you and to be in this packed room. Really looking forward to this amazing panel conversation. And so really this conversation, we're going to be really focusing on a central theme. What happens when leaders stop treating God as an advisor and start treating him as the CEO? And so we're going to talk about real unfiltered moments and really get into it. So we're going to start with Nneka sitting in the middle here. So Nneka, here's the question for you. How do you practically discern the difference between fear, logic, and obedience when making high-stakes decisions? And what does that process actually look like for you?
So I've been reflecting a lot about my journey over the past 15 years, and I've had to make a lot of decisions, whether related to store transitions, team leadership, business operations. But one really big decision stood out to me that I want to share with you all today, and it started really, really early in my career. So just to give you all some context, growing up, I wanted to be a pediatrician. And pharmacy was more of my backup plan. But after an unsuccessful attempt at the MCAT, I decided to work as a pharmacist for a few years and attempt the exam at a later date. So I moved to Ontario, I obtained my license, but then an unexpected opportunity to pursue franchise ownership with Shoppers Drug Mart came about. And so at the time, I was a newly licensed pharmacist. I was 2 weeks in a new province. And med school was still in the back of my mind. And so I was at a major crossroads, and I remember feeling a mixture of excitement, fear, self-doubt, and uncertainty. And so how did I know that this opportunity was something that I should pursue? And so for me, the process always begins with prayer. I seek God for wisdom, discernment, direction. I also seek counsel from trusted mentors, family, friends, but most importantly, I pay attention to what God may be revealing through certain circumstances and opportunities that may arise. But when it comes to distinguishing between fear, logic, and obedience, there are a few things that I look at. The first is I actually examine my motives. Am I making a decision because I trust God, or because I'm trying to protect myself? And so fear sometimes would sound like, what if I fail? What if I'm not enough? whereas obedience tends to ask a different question. What is God calling me to do? I also look at the emotional fruit. So fear often will cause anxiety, paralysis, a fixation on worst-case scenarios, whereas obedience, it may not always remove uncertainty, but it often causes a sense of peace and conviction, especially if the road ahead seems challenging. And the last thing I ask myself is, am I willing to surrender my preferred outcome? So if I'm only going to be happy if one specific door opens, then I may be trying to control the situation. And so true obedience means trusting God with the outcome, whether it's the answer that I want or not. And so circling back to that circumstance 15 years ago, pursuing ownership didn't make logical sense on paper. I wasn't the most qualified candidate. I had no business background, very limited leadership experience. But as I prayed through the decision, I realized that my interest in medicine was fading and my passion for pharmacy and leadership was growing. And despite the fear, I had a deep peace that this opportunity was an answered prayer, because I was going through a lot at that time as well with the organization. And so looking back, I'm grateful that I chose obedience over fear and control, because it's opened so many doors I couldn't even imagine. And I've learned that when I trust God and his plans and his trust and my plans going forward, that it can open doors and he can exceed the plans that I originally had for myself. And so really that's the process that I went through in terms of being here today, and he exceeded beyond what I could even imagine.
Incredible.
Thank you so much for that, Nneka, and being vulnerable in your story. It's funny how no one really understands everyone's full story. So, someone meets you, you're a pharmacist, you have the Shoppers Drug Mart franchise, but letting us know that actually originally your ambition was to be a pediatrician, you had some unsuccessful MCAT attempts. Again, being that vulnerable is also a leadership strength to really tell the full story. So thank you for that, and thank you for that openness. Really helpful. So when we were listening to Lakan earlier, one of the things that really resonated with me from his keynote was the best leaders know how to surrender. In other words, the distinction he was making between what is within our control as human beings and what is in God's divine control. And so that surrender piece was so key. So I kind of want to touch on that, Mo, as we now move into having a chat with yourself. And I'm going to ask you, as the founder of your company, SkillHat Studios, correct? What is a decision where surrender felt like a real risk to your business, either maybe revenue, reputation, or growth? And how did it play out over time for you?
Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me? Awesome. My name is Mo, founder at SkillHat. It's great to be here. Listen, man, entrepreneurship is not a joke. And I'm going to share a secret, a story I've never told anywhere before, because we all need God. When you're an entrepreneur, you really need God. Because you can keep building and building and expecting a big payday. Your mates are making hundreds of thousands and you're working towards a big thing, and it may never come if you're not building in line with God's will and in the right direction. And so I'll talk about the story of how our first business, we were making $5K a month in that business, and then got to our fourth business, which now makes $100K a month, and how I had to shut down other businesses doing that, and how God helped me get here. So some of you may not know this, but my first business was a nightlife business. I was a club promoter. Dwayne knows. I was a club promoter. I got really popular doing that in school, in college. And I was well known for that. In fact, we were the first to bring like WizKid to Canada, bring David to Canada the first time when he was 19. Burna Boy was on our radio show. In my mind, I was going to be the next Diddy. In my mind, this was like 12 years ago. I can't say that right now. Not knowing what's come out recently, that's not the ambition. But back then, that was the ambition. Record label and everything. So I was really well known and popular, and this was going well on the outside. But on the inside, after every event, something bad would kind of happen. Either we would lose the money we made, or I would lose something precious to me, I would get injured. And my mom was like, hey, there's a pattern here, boy. Every time you do this thing, something bad happens. I kind of just brushed it aside. I'm like, moms just talk, right? Forget moms. But then the last event shocked me. The last event we hosted had like 400 people at a club. And then I was counting the money till like 4:30 a.m. because the event before that, someone stole all our money. So I wasn't gonna let that happen again. Started driving home at like 6 a.m. And my eyes were closing. As we're driving, my eyes were closing, and then boom, I drove into a market with goats and rams, and I almost killed myself. I could have killed myself. I could have killed somebody even worse. And I talked to God. I said, God, like I'm using my God-given gift. I'm the guy who was known to energize the crowd, get people together, get people to believe. So I'm using my God-given gift, but something's wrong here. And God told me to just drop the club promotion business, shut down that business. And that was tough for me because I had made like $5K a month in that. I was popular for doing that. I had a dream. And then God asked me, are you going to trust what worked, or are you going to trust me? So for me, I was like, okay, I'm going to trust God. I was 25 years old. This was 10 years ago, for context. So I shut down that business, focused on my tech career, and then that just took off. Within 5 years, I had become a VP in a $100 billion company at 30 years old. Thank you. So then people will come up to me and say, Mo, how did you do this? How did you, as a black professional in Canada, leading corporate? And that's the pattern. When people start coming up to you and start asking you, how did you do this? When you're doing something that's so effortless to you, so easy for you, but others find that hard, that's your gift. That's the gift that God gave you. And my charge to everyone who wants to be an entrepreneur today, show of hands if you're an entrepreneur or want to be an entrepreneur. All right. We can talk after this. I help founders launch their businesses using our infrastructure. Essentially, I realized that was the pattern. Like, we all have gifts, right? The eagle flies, they didn't go to flight school, right? The ant builds, they didn't go to carpentry school. So I'm like, okay, this is my gift. I deployed it in the wrong place, but I'm leading tech. Can I help other people become like me? And that was when we prayed, my wife and I, we prayed 3 days. 3 days fasting and praying, and I got the vision for SkillHat. And SkillHat then became a business that enabled people who are in low-income jobs get into high-income tech jobs in cybersecurity and AI and product management, and that just took off again. And we took that business to over $1.5 million a year in annual revenue. We helped the black community land amazing jobs, and now we help people build their businesses. We got the award from Obsidy. So I guess the lesson here is number one. You have to observe the patterns. When you start seeing patterns, don't ignore the patterns. Number two, you have to pray to God to help you find your gift, then lean into the gift. And then three, help you deploy the gift in the right direction. Because you could deploy the gift in the wrong place, and you think you're doing well, but you're just like, there's like you're here, but you're really meant to be here. And that's what happened to me. And then last is just trust God. Just trust God, keep trusting, and He will make it happen for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so, Dwayne, we come to you, and one of the themes again is around control and the tension between control and surrender. So I want to ask you for your business, and we had a really interesting pre-chat in the back, in the green room, about your business, and we were so in awe of your story. So I want to ask you, if you had chosen control instead of obedience in a key moment, how do you think your business or career would look different today?
So, my name is Dwayne, and it's been interesting because I've never worked a corporate job. And so in doing that, I always tell people that, the entrepreneur journey is a faith walk. It's the deepest walk that you can take with God. And when we talk about control over obedience, if everyone remembers whether you've rode your first bike or you've learned to swim, you had someone there holding you, making sure that you are at least doing the technique to get to that place that you can continue on your own. So as an entrepreneur, it was just like that. I got a call and I picked up, and this was 20 years ago, I've made this decision to go on this walk. So God was my only instructor at that time. He taught me how to put my life vest on. He taught me how to do the things to get myself started. But then there becomes a time where you get this confidence, where you feel like everything that he has taught you in the beginning, you can do on your own now. And, you start going year 1, year 2, year 3, things are going well. The tide is calm and you know how to swim. You could probably even backstroke. You're doing great. And, there's another time where, God is calling you for more, but you feel like you already got it. You feel like you've already, figured some things out on your own. And I remember there was a time, God was calling me for more. And I felt like the life vest that he has given me was enough. I didn't need no more. And a tide was coming that I didn't know. And at that time, I had already hired so many people. Like, things were going great. But little did I know that COVID was coming. Little did I know that this tide that was coming that I needed to prepare for, I wasn't seeing it. So COVID hit and things just started to scramble for a lot of people. But for myself, in the media production, in video production, things exploded. 2021 became the biggest year, the most money I've ever seen. I hired this person. I bought my mom a house, thank God. I was able to do things that I've always dreamed of. So things start to feel like I had it figured out, but those years prior, God wasn't in that. It was my own strength. It was my ego. It was my pride that I was building on. So even though I was seeing a lot of money, the most money I've ever seen, there were things that I needed to learn that I didn't have, that then caused my business to, my accountant called me and said, "Hey, buddy, you owe the government about 100 something thousand." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So I didn't know how to steward money at that time because I've never seen that much money. And this goes back to sometimes we ask for more than we can handle. And I had more than I can handle. So what that did was it caused me to pretty much lose it all. I went into a dark place where I had to fire everyone. I had to literally retreat. And at that time, with the ego and the pride, even relationships were burnt because I felt like this strength was mine, right? And I don't know if I'm the only one, but sometimes when you feel like you're able to do it, you forget about God. You put him in the closet, until it's time for him to come back. But God was just there in my room. I had nothing. I was in a deep, dark depression. And God was just saying, "I have this life vest for you. I need you to put it on." And I heard it clearly. And in that moment, I let everything go. I went into a still moment. I was in the wilderness. I had never felt this weak in my life. And that was because I was shedding. because God was rebuilding me for something bigger. And that was where the obedience came in, right? That's where I let go of control and I started to float. You know? Because sometimes when you're swimming, and some people can swim, but some people can't tread water in the deep end. You know? And what you realize is you have to just relax.
Yeah.
And put your trust in him. Right? And that's what I did. And since then, I've regained that strength. I've recouped even more. The book of Job is my favorite book. You know? I've multiplied because I trusted him. So, that obedience is something now that became my superpower.
Thank you. All right, so we can take some questions, although, newsflash, there is a technical glitch with the hardware. So I think they said the questions are also going to show up at the back here.
Yep.
Okay, so let's take the first one. Nneka, I'm going to put it to you. How do you integrate sharing faith in your business?
That's a great question. To me, I always say character is power. And so it's how I show up every day in my stores. It's how I treat others. And my hope is that others can see God through my character, through my actions, how I treat others. And I've always invited that conversation. If anyone's curious or it comes up in conversation, I always have that conversation with staff and, be open-minded and invite them if they're willing. But I think that's the biggest thing for me. It's how I treat others. God said, love your neighbors, and first love him and then thy neighbor. So I always, treat others. I love them like my family. And to me, I've seen exponential growth because of that. I've seen when you pour into others, what that can do not only for your business but beyond. And so that's the biggest thing how I incorporate faith into my
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. It resonates so much with how I try to also navigate through life. I think you find as you gain more and more experience and you start storytelling. So I think probably in my early years, particularly at work, I would tell stories in a very sort of clinical, sort of factual sort of way. And what I'm finding is the testimonials. I'm bringing more and more of those into my storytelling. Even with folks who perhaps, aren't believers, I feel that my confidence has grown as my faith and spiritual journey has grown to be able to do that and to do it unapologetically. So thanks for sharing that. Now, the next question we have, let me see. I think it says, I'm trusting my glasses prescription. I think it says, how do you know when it's time to let sermons go? Mo, I'll throw that one to you.
Yeah, how do you know when it's time to let someone go, as in like fire someone from the role, right?
No, I think it says, let someone go. Okay,
Yeah.
See my glasses prescription? Let someone go. Thank you, thank you. You're all gonna have to help me here. So yes, how do you know when to let someone go?
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
a great question, and it's a tough one for a founder because being an entrepreneur is so hard. You carry so much responsibility scaling a company. You see people who are so happy to be working for you. They're feeding their family. Recently I had to let someone go in December, and he was expecting a baby in 3 weeks.
Wow.
Imagine that. But it was either him or me. Literally, it gets to a point in business sometimes, things are tough. You gotta look at yourself in the mirror and say, the truth is, it's either I go into debt and go raise capital or borrow money that I don't need or don't have to float the team, or I take a tough decision and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry. we're going to have to end things here because we just can't afford this anymore for whatever reason, or the business unit's not working. And so with that story, I ended up letting that gentleman go. I let, I think, 4 people go in the summer from our company because we downsized and we changed a lot of things because the market's changed with AI and a lot of things that are happening now. So we didn't have to let people go. But the good news is the guy who we let go ended up getting a role that was paying him twice what we were paying him in a short time. So it was actually good for him.
Yeah, that's good.
And then guess what? He ended up quitting that job last week to start his own business. Between November, December, and
that's a testimony.
And what is it? What month are we in? We're in June.
Yeah.
He called me, said, Mo, I pray for you. Everything I learned at SkillHat, working for you, helping launch my own business, and even though I was so mad when you fired me because my kid was coming, it was great for me and for you because your business could keep growing without the huge cost we're paying him. And then we let like a ton of people go, and most of them started businesses or got paid 3 times, 4 times even more. So I guess the first thing is sometimes it's you versus them. It's just the fact of entrepreneurship. Don't go into debt or borrow money you don't have just to keep paying people you can't afford. Principle. Number 2 is, please remember that when it's time. I think number 2 is, and to that first point, for me, I let a guy, chief revenue officer, I had to let him go as well. And this guy was so good. I was so scared that if we let him go, that the business will crumble. But then again, back to God. I'm like, am I trusting him or am I trusting God?
Right.
Yeah.
So my wife said the same thing. She's like, we have to just let these people go. We're pivoting the business. This is the type of people we need now. And then that ended up working for our business. We scaled since that December, tough decision. And then the second thing I'll say is when people are just misaligned, like there's a misalignment in culture. Maybe they're a really strong performer, but the culture, like they're just coming late to work or they're dragging the team down with their words or making snarky remarks. You know, you want to fix that, train that. But if at some point it's just not working, we just cut our losses and say, hey, buddy, I'm sorry. It's not a fit. God bless you. Here's your severance. Find the next person. That's it.
Thank you, Mo. That's really helpful. Dwayne, I'm going to ask for your help here. Can you see that question?
I'm looking.
So could you read it, please, and then answer it? Thank you.
Okay.
Let me know if you need my help. I got my
Yeah.
glasses.
Can I choose one?
Choose one.
I'm gonna choose one. So, okay, when has your values and faith made you walk away or reject an opportunity that actually aligns with your career ambitions?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I faced that a lot. And, especially as someone who works with other organizations and companies that build brands, and they're so cool. And a lot of people are good to work with. But sometimes the decision to walk away has to, be rooted in the mission that I'm on, the mission that God has called me to be on. There's times where I was offered 6 figures to do a project that had no sense of what I'm doing in terms of my mission, and it didn't align with who I was trying to be and who God was calling me to be. So to turn down projects that look good and feel good and it can save you, there will be times where I haven't had the money to pay the bill. I don't know where things are coming from a lot of the times. I don't rely on a 9 to 5. I don't rely on a check that comes in. So sometimes it's so tempting to take what's next. Right. I'm just gonna let that sit, because it'll help you. But the obedience is saying no to that opportunity because God has more. And I had to find comfort in doing that because there's an inner voice that is in all of us that speaks to us. And a lot of times we're not quiet enough to hear it. So the goal is to, before you decide on your own, is to spend the time to sit back and say, is this actually for me? Or is it something that I want because it's going to make me fulfill whatever internal desires that I'm trying to fulfill? And I said no to a lot of things. And I'm at peace because the things that God has provided a week after that, I'm like abundance. You know, and I feel good in it because it's right. And that's always the fight when it comes to having to turn down an opportunity that is not aligned with what God's calling me to be.
Can I just...
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead, jump on that.
I know we're almost out of time, but I just want to add a comment, because this question, for me, what comes to mind is surrendering. And I just want to bring that up again, because surrender, sometimes it can look like taking a giant leap of faith, but sometimes it can also mean letting something go that you worked incredibly hard for. And so I remember for me, there was a season where I pursued an opportunity that I thought would be the next logical step in my career, and it didn't work out. And I questioned my next step, if this is what I wanted to pursue. I was really disappointed. But looking back, I realized that setback was actually preparation for something greater. And, you know, I guess I learned that surrender is less often about loss, and it's more about creating space for God to do his work. And so I'll leave you with this. So obedience is not about abandoning a dream, but it's being willing to let God redefine it. And through that redefining process, you may go through challenges, there may be struggles, difficult seasons, but it's also inviting or accepting the invite that God has for a future, and that can really shape our careers, our personal life, and really our purpose in life.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good